Okay, today I am going to be talking about conclusions and how to write a really strong conclusion that ends your essay exactly the way that you want it. Now, just like every other part of an essay, there's no one way to do this. There are just things that you have to make sure that you do. So with a conclusion, the main thing that you need to make sure that you do is conclude. We know that within our essay, all throughout, we need to be drawing conclusions, making assertions, all of that kind of stuff. And your conclusion is the place for you to make sure you've done that. So the three things that you can do in an essay, in a conclusion, to make sure that you've done what you need to do is restate your thesis statement, summarize your arguments, and have some kind of concluding thoughts. So answering the so what, so to speak. So we know when we looked at our essay placemat earlier in the term, this is the example of the thesis statement that we have. So it says, thus, despite female characters being characterized as both strong-willed and capable, they are only represented as being so at an individual level, which accordingly is not comparable with that gained at a systematic capability. Through the inclusion of historical documents, juxtaposing female identities and symbolic relationships, Kent has subtly articulated that despite being a powerful woman herself, Agnes Magnus Daughter stood no chance in a society that didn't allow one to be powerful as an individual. So you can see it's quite short and sweet. We know that our conclusions only need to be about 10% of our essay. So we want all of the really good, juicy analysis to be in the body paragraphs, and our concluding sentence is quite short and sweet, but it has to be quite powerful because it's the last thing our markers are going to read. And we know that as soon as we finish that conclusion, we want to have a bit of a mic drop moment. We want to have our pens that we've been writing with and mic drop. That's what we want to happen. So I'm going to be writing a conclusion on an essay that is written in response to the question, Kent encourages readers to recognize the ambivalence of Agnes's crime and suggests that evil is multifaceted. To what extent do you agree with this statement? As always, I recommend pausing, working out a response to this question, build a thesis statement, plan some ideas, do some brainstorming, maybe even write an essay, and then come back and have a look at the conclusion that I'm going to put together. Now, I'm going to show you the planning that I did so you can see the kind of essay that I'm going to have written a conclusion in response to. Okay, I feel like I haven't showed enough cat content in these videos, so Spice is very sleepy today. So that's why he looks like this. But he's really excited to learn all about making an awesome conclusion. Pumpkin, on the other hand, she's already pretty good at conclusions, so she's sitting this one out. But she's pretty excited for the next video, isn't she? Imagine being a cat and just like, this guy doesn't have an exam tomorrow. He's just going to sleep all day. But unfortunately, we're not cats, so let's look at making a conclusion. So we can see here that I have done a little bit of planning for the question. So I've broken it down. I've done all of the things that we have lots of practice in doing, and I've done a little bit of brainstorming. Now, you're more than welcome. Let me just make myself smaller. Something that I would never tell any of you to do. We shouldn't do that in life, but anyway, you are more than welcome to have a bit of a screenshot of this or pause it if you'd like to have a look at my planning. It's pretty basic, nothing too revolutionary, but it just looks at how I would answer this paragraph. Now, I've then gone and built a thesis statement. So my thesis statement for this question, I'll remind you of what the question is. So Kent encourages readers to recognize the ambivalence of Agnes's crime and suggests that evil is multifaceted. To what extent do you agree with this statement? So my thesis statement is, the ambivalent nature of Agnes's crime insinuates that evil is an entirely multifaceted concept dependent on one's values. So that's what my whole essay is going to be working at proving. I've got some planning for my body paragraphs. So my first body paragraph is going to look at the fact that the characters that value religion the most are going to be persuaded by Beyondle's viewpoint, because he's very powerful. I'm going to mention power in this paragraph quite a bit. So therefore, Agnes is rendered as being one-dimensionally evil. So there's nothing else to her except for the fact that she is evil. And in terms of evidence, I'm definitely going to use those historical documents with Beyondle discussing Agnes. I'm going to look at dialogue, so like godless woman kind of thing. I'm going to look at biblical allusion. All of these kinds of things are going to help me to prove that it is the value of religion that renders Agnes as being one-dimensionally evil. My second paragraph is going to look at Kent's inclusion of superstitious characters and how this furthers this evil representation of Agnes in a similar way, in the sense that she's referred to as like a devil's child sort of thing, but it's differing to some extent as well, with her being called a witch. So I'm obviously going to look at lexical choice in dialogue, but also characterization for this paragraph. The third paragraph is going to look at the characters that value truth or humanity are going to allow, sorry, not are going to, they do, the novel has been written, Agnes to have a voice, and thus her actions aren't viewed as inherently evil, but rather Natan might be. So that kind of a change in idea there. So I'm going to look at juxtaposition, I'm going to look at dialogue, and I'm especially going to concentrate on Margaret in this paragraph and how she says to Toadie it wasn't her fault, that kind of stuff. So that is my planning for those paragraphs. Now, what I might choose to do is, it's going to depend on how I work. So now at this point, we know how we work best. So for some of us, we work chronologically. So that's what I do. I write an introduction, I write my body paragraphs, I write my conclusion. Some of us like to write our body paragraphs, then go back and write our introduction. Some of us might do something entirely different. But for today's video, I'm going to act like this essay is written, and I challenge you to write this essay. I've given you some planning. It would be really interesting. I would actually really love it if somebody wrote an essay based on this plan, because I think it sounds like a good one. And we're going to pretend like I have, though, and put together a conclusion. So we're going to remember the 3 things we want out of our conclusion. We want it to summarize our arguments, we want it to restate our thesis, and we want it to kind of end with a bit of a so what kind of statement. What we want to remember is that our Spice believes in you. Spice knows that you're going to crush this. So what I want to do in my concluding paragraph is I want to start off with a concluding sentence. Now, we know that we have this document here, our essay placemat, if we're feeling a little bit stuck with our cohesive devices. So in practicing, it's more than okay for you to use this. So you want to get to a point where we don't need it, but if we're still struggling a little bit, open up this document and come down to the section where it says to conclude and start with one of these phrases. So we could start with and so, therefore, finally, consequently, thus, accordingly, hence, as a result. There is also the classic in conclusion, which works just fine, so long as we're not using the same terminology all throughout. I'm going to go for a subsequently. I like subsequently. Now, it's almost like a topic sentence in your conclusion, so it's a really strong statement. And here's where we want to restate our thesis. Now, I don't like to restate it word for word because I don't want my essay to be repetitive. It's only 800 to 1,000 words in length, so I really shouldn't be using the same sentences over and over again. So I'm going to restate my thesis in a different way, but maintaining the same idea behind it. Through Kant's use of lexical choice, actually, I might say historical documents. Characterization. Oh, do you know what I could do? I could say juxtaposing characterization. Juxtaposing characterization and dialogue. Readers are positioned to view evil. I'm going to remind myself of the question. I think it's a good idea to do that all throughout. So the wording of my question is, Kent encourages readers to recognize the ambivalence of Agnes's crime and suggests evil is multifaceted. Okay, great. So position to view evil as multifaceted due to the ambivalent, oops, I spelled that wrong, now we know that if we're given a word in our task, we do not want to spell it wrong. Okay, so if the word is in the question, don't spell it wrong. Ambivalent nature of Agnes's crime. Okay, so if my thesis statement is the ambivalent nature of Agnes's crime insinuates that evil is an entirely multifaceted concept dependent on one's values, and then my concluding, my first sentence in my conclusion says, subsequently, through Kent's use, oh, there's a typo there, this is why we proofread, of historical documents, juxtaposing characterization and dialogue, readers are positioned to view evil as multifaceted due to the ambivalent nature of Agnes's crime. I think that that's different enough while still maintaining the same idea. So now I'm going to go through and kind of briefly restate my arguments. I'm not going to repeat myself. I'm just going to touch on the things that I've discussed to really concrete what's going on. Characters such as Yondel, Margaret, and Toty allow contrasting views. Have I used the word represented yet? No, to be represented based entirely on what they value most, be it religion, superstition, or truth. me read over this to make sure it makes sense. You know that I always like starting from the top of the paragraph and reading because I need to proofread as many times as I can, especially with typing skills like mine. Subsequently, through Kent's use of historical documents, juxtaposing characterization and dialogue, readers are positioned to view evil as multifaceted due to the ambivalent nature of Agnes's crime. Characters such as Bjondel, Margaret, and Toady allow contrasting views to be represented based entirely on what they value most, be it religion, superstition, or the truth. I'm happy with that so far. So what I'm going to do now is I need a sentence that's going to really sum things up, really make sure I can mic drop to keep things nice and clear. Through all of this, despite Agnes's inevitable execution. I might use the word recognize because that's in the question. Readers are able to recognize that regardless of one's personal values, maybe regardless of how firm or how strong, I'm going to say how firm one's personal values may be, the concept of evil is rendered as one, I'm going to say multifaceted again, maybe one with many sides. Alright, let's read over this and see what we think. Subsequently, let's zoom in a little bit. Let's zoom in and see what we think. Subsequently, through Kent's use of historical documents, juxtaposing characterization and dialogue, readers are positioned to view evil as multifaceted due to the ambivalent nature of Agnes's crime. Characters such as Bjondel, Margaret, and Toady allow contrasting views to be represented based entirely on what they value most, be it religion, superstition, or the truth. Through all of this, despite Agnes's inevitable execution, readers are able to recognize that regardless of how firm one's personal values may be, the concept of evil is rendered as one with many sides. I'm going to put an unequivocally in here, because I like that word. It's unequivocally rendered as one with many sides. Okay, that's going to be my conclusion. So let's see how many words this is. 89, perfect, because it's going to be about 10%, and we know we're writing 800 to 1,000 words. Now, I'm interested in your opinion. What do you think of the conclusion? Do you think it could be better? Do you think it could be worse? What's your advice? Give me some feedback. As always, please send through anything that you have worked on. Please let me know if you have any questions. I know we're getting very close now, and I hope that you are feeling really nice and confident, because you should be. I think I'm going to make 1 or 2 more videos today, but I hope that you are doing well. I love you all very much, and I'll see you very soon. Bye!